How is everybody? We're really
Good.
very grateful to be asked to just kind of share some of our experiences over the past year and a half or so of doing this in collaboration with the Idea Center. Myself and my wife, Lottie Mar. Lottie Mar, go ahead and say hi.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So Lottie Mar is the rock star designer at our tiny little LLC called Squad Studio. She's actually the CEO, believe it or not, so that's pretty cool. So what I want to do today is, and I'm really glad John Henry showed Jada's presentation. Jada's a good friend of mine, and I talked to her a lot about that process. And what I'm going to show you today is kind of the DNA or the formula behind how you can create a pitch like that. And then I'm just going to run through a lot of visuals, a lot of pitch decks that we've created over the past year and a half that have raised over $1 million for the Idea Center companies, like John said. So with that, let me just dive in and feel free to just, I can only see a couple of you on my screen while I'm focusing on this. So feel free to just stop me, make this interactive, and just kind of say, hey, got a quick question as I go through this, okay? So let's start with kind of...
I'll monitor chat. So if anyone throws a question in chat,
okay.
I'll be there and can verbal jump in.
Perfect. Thank you, John Henry. So let's just kind of kick off here. And John Henry really teed me up really well for this. So there's a couple just, can I say the commandments of pitch deck, of doing a good pitch deck here? And let me just kind of lead with these. And John Henry already said it. Your deck is your commercial to get you a meeting. It's to get you to close that and get in that meeting. And in the meeting is where the business happens. The deck is the thing that kind of gets them involved and gets them interested. In a pitch, it's about the sizzle and the steak. And that's what you saw in Jada's pitch. It's very much about that story that captivated her audience and got everybody. I mean, I had goosebumps at the end of it. I don't know about you guys, but that's really what this game becomes. And so for you guys, it's what John Henry said. That just comes with tons of practice, lots of hours of practice over and over again until you hit those notes so that it really just captivates your audience. And then I'm going to go through all these kind of the content in that formula for how she was able to create a pitch that way. But I just want to put a huge caveat on this. And like John Henry said, the story is the most important part. And if you have strengths in your team or in your startup or in your idea or in portions of your story and it makes sense to highlight those, then that will dictate the order. So feel free to put those up front or not based on kind of the pieces of the puzzle that you think are just the strongest. So let me start out this. I like to start every one of my pitches with kind of a two-part approach to really hitting that story home. And I call it micro pain and macro problem. And I really kind of got this just from seeing so many venture capitalists and what they're looking for day to day, and angel investors as well. You really want to be moved, especially in early stage investing. You want to show how your startup is solving a micro pain. Now, let me give you an example of a micro pain and what I mean by that. A really good one here is, what's one that I can kind of hit on that's kind of somewhat compelling? This one's pretty good. So this is a company called Vital View, and they came out right and said it from the beginning. And they said, hey, look, the future of health is going to be connected devices in the home. And we're going to be able to bring health monitoring into the home. And that's where it's going. And not only that, it's not just that I'm saying this, it's that a very well-renowned person in this home space is saying this. And then they turned around and said, and it's going to start with this first heartbeat. It's going to start with this first thing. And then they hit kind of this major problem of, hey, look, new parents are incredibly anxious about their newborns. Let me just make that a little bit bigger. And so as you can see, like you're really hitting home at a serious problem. You have a new baby, and all of a sudden this is the only thing on your mind. How do I ensure the safety and health of this baby? And so that's kind of just one way to go about this. But it's about that micro pain. So anytime you can make it personal, that's a huge deal. Let me share another one with you. So this is a drug therapeutic, a cancer therapeutic that we were asked to kind of tell a story on. When we got this deck in it was basically a scientific paper that we had to dig through. So it was a real challenge. And Larimar's shaking her head because she knows just how intense that was to kind of go through. But it was a real challenge to understand what is the story that this drug, the impact of this drug could have on people's lives. And so we came up with this notion of Meet Ben. And Ben is a stage 4 cancer, bladder cancer patient. And 5%, and this is the reality, 5% of Bens survive stage 4 cancer, bladder cancer. And so we kind of hit it right. Go ahead.
I'll jump in real quick. This is the combination of stats support stories. And some people can just go way overboard on stat. Some people can go way overboard on story, but they work together. And so Ben is like the story of the stat in this single visual.
Oh my God, I love that you said that, John Henry. That's exactly right. If as a rule of thumb, let me just reinforce this point. If you are going to put a stat on a slide, pick one. Pick one stat, lean into it, and make it a really important stat. You saw Jada do this. I'm doing this here. And what that allows your audience to do is it allows them to focus, and it shows that you're focused as well. So I want to use Ben here as an example of a micro pain. Immediately, people in the audience that maybe have unfortunately had experience with loved ones that have had stage 4 bladder cancer are automatically very interested in this problem, and because it's visceral for them. And even those that aren't, the fact that there is a human being here and that it's more than about numbers, that it's about Ben, allows people to just connect more with this story. And so this is what I call the micro pain. Then we want to scale out, and we want to show the macro problem. And we want to show, hey, there are actually 81,000 other Bens that suffer from bladder cancer. And unfortunately, chemotherapy is the only treatment for bladder cancer. And this particular drug was something called a targeted therapy. It's a new approach to solving this, as chemotherapy is kind of a nuclear option and isn't always effective, especially for metastasized cancer. And so what we found here is, and the reason I'm using this example, I think, is because what we've been able to do is take something very, very technical and kind of where a lot of people would traditionally turn off and say, okay, that sounds like they know a lot of science, and make it very personal and also show that it's a really big problem. 81,000 is somewhat compelling, but I think really it became realistic when we lumped all of the cancers that this particular enzyme that they had found was found present in. And once you lump all of those together, this becomes a really big venture-sized problem that makes a lot of sense and goes from being rooted in something very personal and something very real and tangible into something that can have a massive impact. And that's really kind of the art form of this. And so that's kind of the basis of this, is hit it with a micro pain and then scale out and show how this is going to become a big problem. It's a really good way to start the show, if you will. And then you want to throw in your solution, explain your solution, and do it succinctly. Jada has a very complicated solution. Like John Henry said, quite frankly, I have talked to her about this so many times, I still don't know if I truly understand it. She's kind of a bit of a financial wizard from all her time on Wall Street, but she's really cracked that nut there. And I think for you guys too, in very simple phrases, very simple words, talk about a solution. So I'll show another one here. This is a ride sharing company. Actually, it's a add-on solution for people that drive ride shares. And so basically, this particular entrepreneur felt that his story was actually really compelling. He's an entrepreneur from Mexico that used to build these tops that go on top of taxis. And he actually had, by the time he was 17, a really big business in northern Mexico. And he talks about this problem, that this rideshare experience is not very ideal. And then he shows that, hey, there's people that are not being able to make ends meet. And there are also people that aren't very safe don't feel safe getting into Ubers and Lyfts. He shows that it's a big problem because even just in New York, ride shares are growing at an insane rate. And then in a really quick slide, he says, here's our solution. We have this thing that we put on top of Ubers that can do advertising and pickup messaging. And then he shows some really splashy pictures about it. And so really quick, he's like, 1, 2, 3. It leads up and it's a nice flowing story, if you will. So that's the solution. And then you want to talk about if it is a tech solution, I always like to put a how it works slide there. And the how it works slide is quite simply, I like to do a 1, 2, 3 method. And you can show this from a lot of different angles, but these are actual pictures of them signing up users. So you even get to sneak in a little traction to this. But it shows Albert signs up a contractor, a technician installs it, and then Albert receives money every month. And that becomes this really simple thing that people can kind of wrap their heads around. Obviously, there's more steps to it. Obviously, there's more going on behind the scenes. But I think it's actually very important for all of you as entrepreneurs to be able to potentially distill down your ideas to 3 simple steps that you can very easily just communicate with people every day about some of your solutions. And what that does is it helps it to really, for people to just grasp it and get excited about it. This is an interesting slide. Some of the major venture capital firms really love this notion of why now. There's this notion out there that there are a lot of markets and a lot of opportunities, but that it really, for a big startup to grow and explode, there has to be some sort of urgency and some sort of mix of events that really created that. I think a most recent example of this is a student venture called Doggi. It's a little IoT smart device. But one of the things they did really well was they kind of really led with the why now a little bit. They kind of hit you with a very visceral, cute puppy picture. And then they say, hey, meet Lisa and meet Buddy. And this is what's happening, Lisa and Buddy. Lisa is a person that, young millennial that works 60 hours a week. And Buddy is a dog. And this is all the things that Lisa and Buddy have to do together in a given day. Basically showing that pet ownership is a lot of work. And then we hit it with a why now right away and shows that, hey, in the climate that we're in today in 2020, this is happening. We actually searched around a lot to find this number. And again, it's one big number, but I think it's somewhat compelling that this coronavirus pet adoption boom is a real thing. And the ASPCA is seeing this 70% increase in animals being adopted and starting through that adoption process via foster care. That number is just huge, and we're seeing it. I mean, all these shelters are getting cleared out, which is a great thing. However, we leave the audience with a huge question mark of, so what happens when to Buddy when Lisa goes back to work after coronavirus has a vaccine, God willing? And that becomes a very compelling way to show urgency and also show that this is a very interesting time for this startup, if that makes sense. Let me pause there. Any questions? This is the formula on how you get the sizzle, on how you communicate that personality to your startup. So let me pause there. Any questions at all for everybody? Okay. Very
No questions, but I'd just like to point out that even through this, we've seen a few examples. And the most important thing here is that you really understand the value that you're bringing to your clients and your customers. And like Michael said at the beginning, that's what leads the direction of your story and the order of your slides. So as all of these that you've seen, some lead with the story, some lead with a stat, and then Doggi was leading with a why now. I mean, you need to understand who your people are, what's important to them, and what's really going to bring their attention at the beginning to hold them. And that's how you start organizing your story rather than a formulaic, well, I am this person, this is the problem, I found a solution. It doesn't need to be that detailed. You need to really think about what works for you. And so just highlighting that a little bit.
Thank you, Larimar. No, I appreciate that. This last part of I would say this is kind of the first half of the game here. The last half of the game is really answering the question of, how is your business investable? How is it a business? Okay, you've proven to me that this is a compelling thing to do. How do you make money? Explain to me why I should invest. So that's really the game here, is get them excited with the sizzle and then show them you've got some steak to back it up, if that makes sense. And so I really like to hit it with a 1-2 punch with the market. I get the venture capitalists very excited about a large market, and then we kind of follow up with something else. This was a really interesting one that we did. This was Doggi. So Doggi is a consumer electronic product, and as you can imagine, there are a lot of pet owners just in the U.S. alone. And so when we sat down and we got really honest with ourselves, and we did something called a bottom-up analysis on our market sizing, we were able to really, I think, make a very interesting estimate as to how big of a market opportunity that this business really was. For the venture model specifically, for venture capital, you want to show $500 million or higher for an opportunity. That might be very different here. There's other incentives here, and I think you guys just need to show a big enough opportunity probably. But I think the most important thing here is the fundamentals of you're doing something called a bottom-up analysis, where you're looking through and you're being really honest with yourself. You're not, the best example of what not to do is, if you've ever seen Shark Tank, when somebody comes out and says, to Mark Cuban or Kevin O'Leary, hey, there are this many of these people in the world, and if we just get 1% of them, we'll all be super rich. And they just kind of roll their eyes at them, because it's a very lazy way to estimate your market and estimate, how big of a business this could be. Instead, investors want to show that you've done the work, and no, not all pet owners are going to buy this thing. It's just going to be probably the Gen X and millennial pet owners in the U.S. alone, probably for the most part, at least for now. And then we talk about total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, and then share of market. This is, again, just a really convenient way to break this down. Total is kind of this is the whole pie. The serviceable is, we think these are the ones that are going to kind of be early adopters and go after this and use this. And then share says, this is how much we think we can carve out in a reasonable amount of time. 3% over 3 years is pretty doable. What you don't want to do is come out there and say, we're going to have all of this market, created in no time at all. You want to be sensible about it. And I think your investors want to know that you have a good business mind, as well as a passion about your product, about the problem you're solving.
So Wix, let me pause you really quick on that one. So I'm looking at Edward's question about how do you do it kind of for an art project rather than a venture one. My recommendation is here we're putting dollar figures in front of it. In yours, you might be putting people, like a count of those who fit your profile, who listen to podcasts, and that might be your addressable market, might be a person count in it. And then Eric asked a question about slide access for examples. Wix, I don't know if you addressed that already, but can people get view access to any of these?
So these are active companies in fundraising, so it's a little bit proprietary, but what we're doing is, and this is part of what the service that Latimar and I offer, if you want to meet with us, we have a full service. We can, between now and the demo day, work with each of your teams one-on-one. That involves hour-long office hours, and then Latimar will actually design your pitch decks for you. So this is a service that you guys could, that if you're interested in, could retain for us and we could help you out with this no problem at all between now and your demo day. So, but if you happen to screenshot a couple things during this, I don't really care. Go ahead. So if you want to take a couple screenshots, be my guest. So market size, John Henry, I'm really glad you said that. If this market sizing assumes that there's a dollar amount, right? And how do we calculate that? Well, I always like to put kind of the assumptions here in the slide notes, just to kind of know how you figured that out, and then maybe some sources. But basically this assumes a model. This assumes how you're going to be charging money. Is it a Is it a one-time cost? Is it a monthly subscription? Is it an annual subscription? What are the prices around that? What do you think people will pay? What's your average LTV per customer? All these questions roll up into this market size. But like John Henry said, if you're not sure about that and you just want to put in the numbers, we think it's this many people, we think it's this big. Every business model is different and every business is a little different. So there's just a lot of ways to kind of portray that information.
Right, and I'll cite Dennis Gerber on this one too, so kind of what I just addressed was, if you're going for philanthropy, how do you talk about market size with philanthropy? But if you remember, when it was Anthony Pienta with Altum Fund, so they mostly do philanthropy, and what he said they want to know is that you're not always relying on their financial cash injection. So he's like, show me how you're weaning yourself off of this. How are you getting to financial sustainability? In one-on-one conversations I had with Anthony, they invested a lot in Word on Fire, and Word on Fire has totally cracked that revenue model nut. And so you just need to be able to explain how you're not always going to have your hand out for cash asking for philanthropy. So the model is going to be really important to show financial sustainability with what you guys are doing.
I really love that, John Henry. Just because you're a not-for-profit doesn't mean you can't have a really good model in what it is that you're doing there. I love that.
Great. And then sorry, Wix, just one more question. Edward, I see you're jumping off. That's totally fine. I'll get you guys all the recordings of this soon. And I'm probably just going to give you guys the Zoom recording. We're not going to put this one up on YouTube due to the nature of the content. Oh, Jason's comment. So yeah, just so you guys know, I'm your free resource, and I'll try to get you more free resources. Wix and Lorimar, they're a paid resource. So that would be on you guys in terms of, if you want more Wix time and Lorimar time, that's just a hourly type, or I think you guys do a fixed fee setup.
Yeah, that's right.
Just so you know, I'm free. That's why you guys got to get on my calendar. I'm going to be a lot better with doing the narrative. I'm not helpful with design, but you might have Fiverr or some other resources that you can get for like, if you don't want to go the Wix route.
Sure. And I just put my email in the chat as well. And so on that model slide, what I like to do is kind of dovetail my market, especially if there's recurring revenue, into a quick model slide that just turns into an equation. It says, look, and this is a really good example of kind of the number. And we did number and cost here, which is a good way to do it as well. There's a lot packed in here, but what you can see is like, okay, this is what they call a beachhead. This is what they think they can get, they can carve out. All right, 7,500, you multiply that by their model, and then you get a projected revenue by a certain date. And so this is a good way to kind of line that up and make it very simple on, no, we know exactly who we're going after. And not only that, we know exactly how we make money. And I really like that John Henry really hit this point home. All of you are at various stages of your building, but of your businesses, but you're all working very hard and you all have something done and traction done. This is the stake. This shows that there's a meatiness to this, that you guys aren't just talking here, that you're doing something about this. And I think that's why Jada's pitch really hits home, because she's able to put photos of all the lives that she's impacted. She talks in this kind of theory of like, well, you know, here's this, let's meet Barbara, this person Barbara, that's fictitious, or you think she's fictitious and then she isn't. There's kind of a really cool reveal to that really captures your attention. I think all of you can play that game with your traction and then your plan. I normally do this in kind of a timeline slide. It's like here's what we've done to date. Here's what's next. This is how we're going to conquer the world. This is how we're going to get awesome and get huge. But there's a lot of ways to do that I think are very impactful. I think Jada showed another really cool one where it wasn't about a timeline and it wasn't about numbers. It was more about, and let's just show the visual impact of how many lives we've affected with these images. That might be a really good play for a lot of your teams and a lot of your businesses. And then finally, you want to hit it with the team slide. You want to show why you guys are uniquely poised to solve this problem for a lot of people and to provide this value for everybody. And then, as John Henry said, for the ask, doesn't have to be in the slide. And I really like that he pushed on you guys. It's not just about the number, it's also about the use of funds. investors want to know that you know what to do with this money. So I would just take your time on this and make sure that you guys are being thoughtful about and honest. Not that you wouldn't be, but just honest with yourselves about what things are going to cost, and that you're honest with the investors too, as well. If you guys have questions on that, that's a huge thing.
Can you show just one example of a good use of funds? Because they'll essentially have to make one. It just won't be in the deck. It'll be delivered. And so that kind of connection between how the money gets a milestone, I think is an important concept.
We did one here. This one was not very, he did his ask offline is what he did. And so that one didn't have it in the slide as well. This guy, these Frost Control they're raising $1 million seed round. Again, they did theirs offline. So like you said, a lot of these are different. I think Doggi did it pretty well though. They weren't asking for the world. They were asking for, here's the point in validation we're at with our project. We're here. We're still building the technology, and all we're asking for is 11K to get past this validation point so that we can move our business along and get on to the next stage here. And here's what that 11K is going to break down to. It's going to break down to legal and incorporation. It's going to break down to some technical development. And then it's also going to break down to some really important market validation studies to start to generate early traction and start to show an early sales channel, which I really loved how he did this. And it was just kind of 1, 2, 3. And these prices are realistic and they make sense. And it's not, they're not asking for the world here. They're just asking for what they're going for the next milestone. And I thought that was really smart. If they came out there and said, hey, we're looking for $1 million to do all these things, a lot of investors would kind of laugh in their face because they're not validated yet up to those points. They're not at a seed round yet. And what you find is as you go through this fundraising journey, every stage of that journey means something different about the validation of your business. It means that you validated it a little bit more each time. And so here, what he's saying is like, no. I'm not there yet. I haven't validated it that far. I've got 2 surveys of 50 people that say this is what they really want to see. And we've got a prototype. We just need a little bit more money to get it over the fence to the next stage. And I really thought that was a smart way to go about this.
Yeah, and Karina, you're asking, is it different for us since the prize is 100K? I would say it follows the same principles of you want a clear ask that shows that you've researched what the line items are, and you want it to be able to argue for a milestone. So if you're trying to hit X number of homes with my prayer corner or whatever that number gets you, people get bored when they say, can you pay for my website? They get excited when you say, can you help me change this number of lives? So they just it needs to be connected with the overall story of it.
I love that, John Murray. Thank you. Well, that's let me just reiterate my 3 commandments here. In a pitch, it's about the sizzle and the steak. The order of your slides should play to your strengths, and your deck is the commercial to get you the meeting. Just remember those 3 things, and all of you are going to be phenomenal. And I look forward to maybe talking to each of you. If you'd like to engage our services, let me know. My email's in the chat. But I hope this was helpful and you found some value in this. Any other last questions for us before we jump off?
All right, I don't hear any wicks. So I think we'll cut it off. Thank you all. A lot of content to go through today, big news shifts and things like that. So let me know if there's more support we can give you. Thank you also for those who have been booking up my office hours. It's starting to get tight on the calendar, so I probably need to go back and reserve it. And so if you're not finding it, Slack me. We'll figure it out if that little calendar widget is all booked up. So trigger me, rattle my cage. Let's get you good stories.
Love that. All right, everybody. Very nice meeting all of you.
See you guys.